Mark Nash, a name synonymous with brutal murder and criminal infamy in Ireland, became one of the country's most notorious figures for his involvement in a series of horrifying killings. His story spans years of shocking crimes, flawed investigations, and the eventual pursuit of justice, all tied to the dark underbelly of Ireland's criminal landscape. From a troubled youth to a convicted serial killer, Nash's life story reveals a pattern of escalating violence, legal missteps, and a legacy that continues to echo through the Irish criminal justice system. Mark Nash was born in 1972 in Dublin, Ireland, into a working-class family. While little is known about the specifics of his childhood, it is apparent that his formative years were far from ideal. Growing up in the tough neighborhoods of Dublin during the 1980s and 1990s, Nash's early life was marked by the socio-political turmoil of Ireland's recent history, including the violence and unrest caused by the Troubles. It is believed that, like many individuals caught in this environment, Nash's development was significantly influenced by the harsh surroundings in which he was raised. By his teenage years, Nash began to develop a reputation as a troublemaker, frequently engaging in petty criminal activities. His first run-ins with the law were minor offenses, but these early experiences would become the foundation for his later, far more violent criminal endeavors. The lack of a strong familial or societal support structure likely contributed to Nash's eventual immersion into a world of serious crime. As he grew older, Nash's offenses became more severe. The violent tendencies that would later characterize his criminal career began to surface, and his lifestyle veered further away from any potential for redemption. His lack of meaningful relationships, his disregard for authority, and his inner demons began to shape the man who would soon become one of Ireland's most infamous criminals. In March 1997, Mark Nash's life took a horrific turn, marking the beginning of a string of brutal murders that would ultimately define his legacy. On that fateful day, Nash brutally murdered two women, Sylvia Shields, aged 46, and Mary Callanan, aged 56, in Grangegorman, Dublin. The crime was gruesome, with both victims stabbed multiple times, their bodies severely mutilated. It was clear that these murders were not random. They were targeted, methodical, and marked by extreme violence. The discovery of the bodies sent shockwaves through the local community. Police were immediately drawn into a complex and frustrating investigation. Despite the brutal nature of the crime, there were no immediate leads or suspects, and the police struggled to find any forensic evidence that could point them toward the killer. The case quickly became one of the most high-profile unsolved murders in Ireland at the time, sparking public concern and intense media attention. For years, the Grangegorman murders remained unsolved. The victims' families and the public were left in limbo, as the lack of a breakthrough in the case left many questioning the ability of law enforcement to bring the killer to justice. However, unknown to them, the true identity of the murderer was closer than anyone could have imagined. In August 1997, just 5 months after the murders in Grangegorman, Mark Nash's bloodlust took him to Ballintober, County Roscommon. Here, Nash killed Carl Doyle, a man in his mid-30s, and his wife, Catherine Doyle. The crimes mirrored the brutality of the Grangegorman killings, with both victims stabbed repeatedly. This new double murder bore the hallmarks of Nash's violent nature, and it quickly raised suspicions that the crimes in Roscommon were connected to the previous murders in Dublin. The police, still reeling from their lack of success in solving the Grangegorman murders, were left to grapple with yet another brutal double homicide. Nash's involvement in the Roscommon killings seemed like a clear pattern of escalating violence, but as with the Grangegorman case, the investigation faced major roadblocks. Police were unable to gather enough evidence to make an arrest, and Nash, like the killer before him, was able to slip through the cracks of law enforcement. As he left more victims in his wake, Nash's sense of invincibility grew. It seemed as if he could commit these heinous crimes without facing any consequences. evading capture despite his increasingly reckless behavior. For years, the investigation into both the Grangegorman and Roscommon murders appeared to stall, leading law enforcement to focus on other leads. One of these leads involved a young man named Dean Lyons. In 1999, Lyons was arrested and charged with the Grangegorman murders, largely based on circumstantial evidence. This arrest was the result of a rushed and flawed investigation that overlooked important forensic details. Dean Lyons spent several years in prison, maintaining his innocence throughout. However, it wasn't until the use of advanced DNA technology in 2001 that a breakthrough in the case occurred. The DNA evidence linked Nash to the Grangegorman murders, leading to Lyons' exoneration and Nash's eventual arrest. While the wrongful conviction of Dean Lyons was a tragic miscarriage of justice, it also provided the key breakthrough in solving the Grangegorman murders, as the true killer was finally identified. This case serves as a stark reminder of the dangers of rushing to judgment and the importance of thorough and unbiased investigations. Dean Lyons' wrongful conviction sparked outrage and renewed calls for reform in the Irish criminal justice system. After years of investigation and legal battles, Mark Nash was finally arrested and charged with the Grangegorman and Roscommon murders. In 2015, after an extensive trial, Nash was convicted of the two murders that had haunted Dublin and Roscommon for nearly 2 decades. The jury's verdict was seen as a long-awaited moment of justice for the families of the victims and the public who had waited so long for answers. The conviction came after a difficult trial, during which Nash attempted to claim his innocence, despite the overwhelming forensic evidence against him. The DNA match, which had been instrumental in linking him to the Grangegorman murders, was irrefutable, and Nash's defense arguments were ultimately dismissed. Mark Nash was sentenced to life imprisonment for the two murders. His conviction was a major victory for law enforcement, marking the end of one of Ireland's most chilling criminal cases. However, Nash's journey through the criminal justice system was far from over. In 2018, Mark Nash appealed his conviction, challenging the fairness of his trial. His legal team argued that the publicity surrounding the case, coupled with the delay in bringing him to trial, had compromised his right to a fair hearing. They contended that the media coverage had influenced public perception and potentially swayed the jury's decision. Despite these arguments, the Court of Appeal upheld Nash's conviction, affirming the jury's unanimous verdict. The court concluded that Nash's rights had not been violated, and the original conviction stood. This ruling was seen as a victory for justice, and it further cemented Nash's status as a convicted serial killer. As of 2025, Mark Nash remains incarcerated at the Midlands Prison in Portlaoise, Ireland, where he continues to serve his life sentence. His case, especially the wrongful conviction of Dean Lyons, continues to attract attention from the media and legal scholars. The controversy surrounding his conviction and the issues related to the mishandling of the investigation into his crimes remain subjects of public discourse. In addition to his continued imprisonment, Nash has also been involved in legal battles concerning his prison conditions and eligibility for parole. Despite his life sentence, Nash's legal team has occasionally filed appeals and motions for early release, though these efforts have so far been unsuccessful. Mark Nash's story is one that is rife with tragedy, controversy, and unanswered questions. His brutal murders shocked Ireland and left lasting scars on the victims' families and the communities affected by his crimes. The case has sparked significant debate about the effectiveness of the criminal justice system, the challenges of convicting serial killers, and the impact of wrongful convictions on innocent individuals. Nash's life, which began in troubled circumstances, was ultimately defined by violence and criminality. Yet his story is also a reflection of broader societal issues. including the failures of the justice system and the need for continued reform. As Mark Nash's life sentence continues, his legacy remains a painful reminder of the atrocities he committed and the long, difficult path to justice that was required to hold him accountable. The lessons learned from his case continue to influence the way Ireland and the wider world approach criminal investigations and the search for truth in the pursuit of justice. Mark Nash's life story serves as a cautionary tale, highlighting the complexities of criminal investigations, the repercussions of systemic failures, and the relentless pursuit of justice. From his troubled beginnings to his rise as a violent serial killer, Nash's actions left a permanent mark on Ireland's criminal history. Despite his conviction, the case continues to raise questions about the workings of the justice system and the lasting impact of violence on individuals and communities. As his story unfolds, it serves as a reminder of the enduring need for vigilance, fairness, and accountability in the fight against crime. That is it for our video today. Like and subscribe and comment below what you think of Mark Nash, and I will see you on the next video.